Hello there. It is that time again, ladies and gentlemen. Kits on one of the most meta-defining characters in Genshin have finally been revealed. With the release of version 6.3, we as a community are expected to finally get our hands on Columbina, former member of the Fatui Harbingers and now a Desolated Archon, or Archon-esque character. And once again, as is par for the course, Columbina is a very, very powerful character, fulfilling the role as a support and, even at later constellations, being able to do pretty decent amounts of damage on her own. But before we continue, it's time to pay my editors. This time, we're sponsored by LD Shop. Look man, I play a lot of gacha games. I know you do too. Things get pretty expensive after a while, so it's nice to be able to get a little bit of a discount here and there, because at the end of the day, every cent saved is a cent earned. And by using LD Shop, you'll be saving a lot of cents. LD Shop offers up to a 20% discount on all in-game items. And if you want, you could save a little bit more money, with the link down below earning you up to an additional $50 off your next order. And because I'm not one to just throw you to the wolves and have you figured out for yourself, don't worry, I actually tested out the service myself. As you can see, we're currently in Genshin, as you can tell by my ugly filters that you all love to comment on so much. Gonna go on over to LD Shop, go to Genshin, get one of the 3 welcome packs, make sure you select the right server. If you don't, there's nothing you can do for you. Put in the ID. I just copy pasted mine directly from in-game, by the way. You can add me if you want to. And then top up. Alright, and now that the transaction's completed, we're just gonna wait in-game for a little bit and get our item. Okay, there it is, as soon as I alt-tab back into the game. 1, 2, 3. As you can all see, I got my 122 items pretty much immediately. And yeah. I mean, that's pretty much it. So there you go. Save yourself some money, use the link in the description, really helps support the channel. That all being said, let's get back into the video. Now, with that all being said, let's begin to go over these kit details. Columbina is a Hydro Catalyst 5-star character who hails from Nodcry and has a specialty in lunar reactions. Like other lunar reaction characters, she follows the Virident Dew mechanic. This is the stacking effect that you gain in the moon icons that show up when she is in the battle. If you have played Lauma or Nefer or even Flynn's, you know what this mechanic is, and it is very important to how her kit operates. That being said, let's discuss her normal attack, the Moonlit Dewfall. As a Catalyst character, she deals 3 basic strikes of consecutive Hydro-infused damage. She also has a charge attack which consumes stamina, being par for the course for a character of this variety. However, she does have an interesting mechanic unlike others of her archetype. If you have at least one Virident Dew, when Columbina uses a charge attack, it will instead be replaced by a special stamina-free charge attack called the Moondew Plunge. This consumes one of your Virident Dew stacks and deals 3 instances of AoE Dendro damage, which is also considered as dealing Lunar Bloom reaction damage, which means that at the time of recording, Columbina is the first character in all of Genshin's history that is able to do multiple forms of damage by herself. No, Chaska and her gun doesn't count because you need other elements on the team for her to do that. Again, I feel like I've said this a lot already, but we will discuss this later for the sake of brevity. For Columbina's elemental skill, Tides of the Everdeep, Columbina will call upon the Tide of the Moonseed, dealing AoE Hydro damage and summoning a Gravitational Ripple. While the Gravitational Ripple is active, the active character will deal continuous AoE Hydro damage to all nearby enemies. When nearby party members trigger a Lunar Reaction or deal Lunar Reaction damage, Columbina will gain the New Moon's Omen for 2 seconds, which accumulates 20 gravity every 2 seconds. This effect can stack multiple times, however the max amount of gravity you can have is 60. When this happens, the ripple effect will expire. Once the gravity reaches this state, it'll trigger a tidal interference based off the most accumulated lunar react type. For example, if you have Columbina on a team with a Geo character and you're doing Lunar Crystallize, and you do that 7 times but you only do Lunar Bloom twice, it's going to do a Lunar Crystallize. The type of reaction you get off of this skill will change depending on the element that it triggers off of. Lunar Electro Charge deals AoE Electro damage and is treated as Electro Charge damage. Lunar Bloom fires 5 Moondew marks at nearby enemies, treated as Lunar Bloom damage, and Lunar Crystallize deals AoE Geo damage, which is also treated as a Crystallize proc. So once again, we're following the same cosign as her auto attack. She will be able to effectively trigger every single type of lunar reaction on her own, being a amazing support for a majority of the DPS characters that have come out, which means I know is going in the fucking bin. God rest her soul. He did me good service. But wait, there's more, because we need to talk about the Elemental Burst, her homeland's longing. In the name of the unsullied new moon, she reshapes land into a moonlit domain and deals AoE damage. While within the moonlit domain, all party members gain increased lunar reaction damage. That has a duration of 20 seconds, a cooldown of 15 seconds, and an energy cost of 60, which makes it identical to Nahida's Elemental Burst with the same level of uptime, meaning if you build her properly, which you should, you are going to be able to have 100% uptime on this incredibly powerful Elemental Burst. For her talents, there are two that we are specifically looking at: Legacy Beneath the Moonlit and Moon Sign's Benediction, Lend Me Your Moonlight. The passive talent Legacy Beneath the Moonlight will only trigger when tidal interference occurs. When this happens, Columbina will gain a Moon Madden status effect, which increases her crit rate by 5 for 10 seconds with a max of 3 stacks. Her second passive talent, Moonlight Benediction, causes a unique effect when the party triggers Electrocharge, Bloom, Hydrocrystallize, or any reaction that falls under the cosine of the Lunar Charge. They will then be converted into their equivalent Lunar Electro, Lunar Bloom, or Lunar Crystallize reactions, while also increasing the base lunar reaction damage for the party based off Columbina's max HP, the scaling of which is for every 1000 max HP equals a 0.2% base lunar reaction damage bonus up to a maximum of 7%. Columbina will also increase the max moon size level by 1 while being on the team. However, this is a basic effect. But in a unique case, Columbina is the first character in Genshin to have 4 passive talents that aren't just an alternative run like Mona and Ayaka. Her third passive talent, Lull of the Crescent, has a unique bonus that affects her Elemental Burst. While inside the Moonlit domain, characters gain effects based off the triggered lunar reaction. The lunar reaction bonuses are as follows. When dealing Lunar Electrocharge, Stormcloud attacks intervals lose a cooldown of 0.5 seconds, resulting in faster strikes. For Lunar Bloom, she will grant 1 Mountain Moon Verdant Dew with a max of 3 every 18 seconds, allowing much smoother rotations on Lunar Bloom teams with Lauma or Nefer Strikes. For Lunar Crystallize, each Lunar Wand in Resonance has a 33% chance to strike again. Now I know this sounds weird, but this has to do with her elemental skill. I discussed it earlier, but when she pulls in things with her gravitational field, it will cause an AoE explosion. This gives you a RNG chance of it attacking twice, which sounds lame, and it is a little lame, but I assure you that if it hit every time, it would be very overpowered. But this might lead to some circumstances in the future where you could, maybe fail a Abyss run because you just didn't get lucky on your RNG strikes. Finally, her last talent, the Exploration passive, Watcher of the Moon. When a character falls in battle, Columbina revives that character and restores HP, scaling with Columbina's max friendship level, with an occurrence rate of once every 100 seconds. Now, this sounds very strong, and before you get up in arms talking about how this is Caster's passive number 2, there's a little bit of caveat here, and that is, this effect only can occur in Nodcry, which means that's not going to work in Spiral Abyss, it won't work in anywhere that's not the Moon Maiden's jurisdiction, so it's not actually that strong. And honestly, if you're dying with Columbina on your team, it's a little bit of a skill issue, dude. Constellations. Usually, I don't like to cover these. I feel like a majority of the people that watch pre-release leak content already know well and good what they're getting into, so I'll give you a brief overview of what her C1 and 2 does, as well as any additional points, because a lot of people might be pulling for early constellations, seeing as this is an Archon character, so I'm willing to make an exception. C1, Blooming Plains Beneath Hidden Peaks. When casting Tides of the Everdeep, immediately trigger 1 instance of tidal inference. This can occur once every 15 seconds. In addition, when Lunar Tide triggers, you will receive an additional effect based off of the reaction type. Lunar Electro gains 6 energy on the active character. Lunar Bloom increases the active character's interruption resistance, and Lunar Crystallize summons a shield that absorbs a percentage of HP based off 12% of Columbina's, plus the additional 250% Hydro absorption. Additionally, all nearby party members have their lunar reaction damage increased by 3%. So to summarize that, the AoE effect on her elemental skill will give additional bonuses, and it will trigger 1 immediately as soon as you activate the skill. Now we need to discuss the C2, Radiant Companion Through the Night, which has a pretty powerful effect as you would expect. For starters, gravity accumulation on the elemental skill has its speed increased by 34%, cutting down the cooldown time from 6 seconds to roughly 4 seconds. In addition, when tidal interface occurs, Columbina gains Moonlit Grace for 8 seconds, which increases her max HP by 30%. During Moonlit Grace, based off of the domain lunar reaction type, lunar reaction gets damage bonuses. For example, lunar reaction's Electrocharge increases the active character's attack
attack by 0.7% of Columbina's max HP. Lunar Bloom increases it by a percentage of elemental mastery equal to 0.35% of Columbina's max HP. Lunar Crystallize increases the character's defense by 0.7% of Columbina's max HP, and each party member's lunar reaction damage is increased by an additional 3%. So to cut everything down, for those of you that kind of tuned all that out, because that was a lot of numbers and math, Columbina C2 makes your elemental skill proc more. Every time it procs, it increases her max HP, which increases her scaling, and then she gives you buffs to the team based off of the reaction that proc, based off of her max HP. It is very powerful. This is a C2 Farina moment. However, unlike C2 Farina, where it's a universal bonus, this is more of a targeted buff to lunar reaction. So you're going to see a very big buff for some very niche characters. That being said, I have some opinions. Columbina is very, very strong. And if you are planning on playing the game for the next couple of years, by all means, go ahead and pull her. However, there's something I want to say. In Genshin and Star Rail and whatever other gacha game you play, there is a specific archetype of character that is a dedicated buffer type, and there is nothing wrong with that. I do think it can be a little annoying, but usually when characters like this come out, you know they're going to be good. However, we have a set in stone end date on when Columbina's power is going to fall off. She is a buffer of the lunar charge reaction, which is what the DPSs of the region perform. In the future, when we stop getting lunar charge characters, Columbina will effectively lose her usefulness. And over the course of the next year or 2 years, if power creep in Genshin keeps going the way it's going, I can see a point where she will have the same fate as Nahida, who buffs Dendro by a lot, but does it really matter when you're not using Dendro teams anymore? Now, that's not to say you shouldn't pull Columbina if you like her. I do think Columbina is a very good character, and she will be very strong for the next year. However, she's not a character like Mavuika, who does really good damage and gives universal buffs, or Farina, who just gives universal buffs, period, to a very high extent, while also being a decent sub DPS and healer. This character has a defined end date written in their code. It's a lot like the Cyrene situation. But she will be strong, and she is strong as fuck. And her C1 and her C2 make it to where I am convinced she will be good for at least 2 years if you get that C2. So if you're thinking about investing in a character's constellations, or if you really like the Nodcry characters, by all means, go for Columbina. Personally, I'm going to, but I know what I'm getting into. But I managed to make DPS Kinich work. I'm sure I can make Columbina work. With that all being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, ladies and gentlemen. Like, comment, subscribe, dislike it if you dislike it, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe, and I wish you luck with your pulls. Peace.